The history of navigation is steeped in tremendous technological breakthroughs, and, in addition to the efforts undertaken by courageous sailors, these innovations have changed the entire development of mankind. But sailing the seas and oceans was always a dangerous task. Storms churned the waters, causing violent waves and shipwrecks. Pirates attacked the ships to steal goods, and epic battles were fought on the high seas. Bigger and better ships were built and armed with devastating weapons. This turned the oceans into the world of warships. The first combat ships appeared in the Bronze Age, but in Greek antiquity, military ships played a decisive role for the peoples residing near the Mediterranean Sea. The Trireme was the most successful warship of that time. It was used extensively by the Greeks, Egyptians, and later the Romans. The triremes were robust ships, about 35 meters long. The name comes from the distribution of the oarsmen on the ship's hull, forming 3 rows of oars. During battles, the triremes tried to stand side by side with the enemy ships, allowing the crew members to shoot arrows and spears at the opponents. Another very effective tactic was to use the battering ram of the bow of the ship, striking forward into the enemy's side. The goal was to damage the hull or tear it apart. The triremes were one of the foundations of ancient Greek history. They were used in historical confrontations, such as the Battle of Salamis, where the Greeks fought a large fleet of Persian ships led by King Xerxes. The Punic Wars were fought between the military powers of Rome and Carthage. Naval battles were decisive in the struggle for control of territories and trade routes. Warships were again improved with catapults and large ballistae, capable of sinking enemy ships at long distances. During the Viking Age, warships took on a lesser role in naval combat. But there were new advances to the area of navigation. The Vikings developed a new hull for their familiar ships, the drakars. The low, pliable hull of the drakars allowed for navigation in shallow water, something very beneficial to the Vikings in raiding villages and towns. The Byzantine Empire also contributed to the development of warships by adding incendiary weapons to the bow of the vessels. These weapons fired a highly flammable liquid that could ignite even when in contact with water. This weapon received the name Greek fire. Its making remains a mystery to this day, as the Byzantines went out of their way to keep everything a secret. Warships equipped with Greek fire were crucial to the Byzantine Empire's survival. They were used extensively against Arab invaders who tried to conquer Constantinople, the empire's capital. But the history of warships is not limited to the West. In distant Korea, the impressive turtle ships were created. This unusual vessel is considered to be history's first armored ship. The turtle ships were heavy and not easily maneuverable, but they made up for their lack of mobility with remarkable strength. The turtle ship was equipped with a copper or bronze cover and an incendiary weapon, usually adorned with the figure of a dragon. During the Middle Ages, warships were poorly developed, but with the advent of gunpowder and the fearsome iron cannons, ships again rose to prominence. Around the 15th century, the age of great navigations began. The major European powers organized huge maritime expeditions, seeking new lands to colonize or new trade routes. Many military conflicts took place during this period. Warships were armed with more and more cannons and ammunition. As time went on, wars between European nations intensified. There was more pirate activity in the Atlantic Ocean and the Caribbean Sea. As a result, some ships were equipped with dozens of cannons and became real floating fortresses. A good example are the man-of-war or man-o'-war ships, widely used until the 19th century. Man-of-war ships were gigantic for their time, 60 meters long, and could have more than 100 cannons. New steam engines made it possible to build even heavier warships. It was no longer necessary to use masts and sails. The first armored ships appeared around 1860 and changed the history of naval battles forever. Initially, armored warships were built of wood and covered with metal plates, but ships with all-steel hulls and reinforced armor quickly began to appear. Armored ships had a great influence on the American Civil War. The heyday of battleships was the First World War. There were massive battles between steel giants. The Battle of Jutland in 1916 was fought between the British and German navies. It was the largest battleship clash of all time. It is considered the greatest naval battle in history. During World War II, warships lost efficiency. Advances in aeronautics and the rise of submarines turned battleships into easy targets on the high seas. At the end of their golden age, large battleships were built to intimidate opponents. The Germans built the gigantic Bismarck. Although it was short-lived, it was a great rival for the British Navy. The Japanese went further and built the heaviest and most powerful battleship in history, the Yamato. Weighing an impressive 72,000 tons and measuring 263 meters in length, the Yamato was a sea monster. It took many American bombers and torpedo boats to sink the Yamato. This defeat marked the end of the large battleship supremacy. Today, many military ships play a key role for many countries, but the glories of the past will forever live on in the history of warships.